photographers are really, really bad at asking for money.
Back again for another Lo-Fi Monday. And today with Lachlan, we're going to be talking about client calls and how to actually convert them into sales. If this is your first Lo-Fi Monday, check out last week's video because there is so much in there. It's pretty much a masterclass on taking a paid ad or just any early inquiry really and actually converting it into a sale, and all the pieces and the things that you should be doing. Today, we're going to focus specifically on the actual call and or in-person meeting that you might find yourself in. So welcome, Lachlan.
Hello. This is like a super exciting topic for me because at least in our Ignite program, it's pretty much the one job that we ask our photographers. And it's also kind of interesting because we offer I'm taking a little side quest here, but we offer a 60-day trial actually on the Ignite program. And what's interesting about that trial is it's kind of a two-way trial. So it's 60 days where if a photographer is not feeling, the flow and the system that we have with Ignite and they're not liking it, no worries, they can exit. It makes it very flexible and low risk, but it's also our action to kick people out of the program. And by far, Taylor, the number one reason we kick photographers out of the program are because of the way they do their calls. And we're pretty direct in like our feedback. We have a guy named Troy here at Focal whose whole job is to train photographers on how to do calls, watch recordings of the calls, and provide feedback. You need to be able to do client calls in order to book weddings. You need to be able to connect with clients, listen. You need to be a good listener. But honestly, before all of that, because I think most photographers are pretty good, like connecting with couples. Before all of that, the number one thing is actually just being professional on a Zoom call. And it's kind of scary how much I need to talk about this.
What are the things that you see?
By far, the number one reason we boot people out of the program is for taking client calls in their car while driving behind the steering wheel. By far, number one reason.
Okay. That's pretty extreme. I don't think I've ever done that. I've listened to some meetings that I didn't have to interact with while driving, but yeah, that's a little next level.
It is pretty next level. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but it just highlights again like how important the professionalism is on that call because it's first impression, right? At least in Ignite, couples are kind of exchanging emails with our studio management team. So typically somebody like Karina, hey, I'm Taylor's studio manager from Focal. And it's up to Karina to actually book that call with the client. And so their very, very first impression coming off of
very professional. Very nice.
Exactly. Coming off of a highly professional conversation with Karina and then handing them off to like the photographer, we need to continue the consistency in the professionalism and the branding. And I hate to have to say this, but number one is like wear headphones. You just have to wear headphones. I don't care what your excuse is. Get $10 Apple 3.5 millimeter wired headphones, because echoing and delay in audio on a call drives everyone insane. Crazy. Drives me crazy. And like you just can't take in content. You can't have like a meaningful connection if the audio isn't there. So that's like by far number one. The second one is like not to have your angle of your camera like this. This all,
like the
all
Facebook selfie dad.
the Facebook selfie dad. All these things sound really, really basic, but we have to say them. Like, I would also say if you can get a good setup in your home or in your office or your studio with a decent background, that's really important. Obviously, like we know a lot of people want to use kind of the AI backgrounds. This is real. I think real backgrounds build trust. I don't know. What do you think, Taylor? Like, it's like, what are you hiding behind what's behind the beach in Hawaii?
Just
like,
a bunch of laundry. No, I would for sure agree with that. I feel like we've kind of seen this in the photography space that things got like too perfect, even with like digital photography. And that's why there's a resurgence of film. Like people want more authentic moments. So I think if you do really like focus exceptionally hard and you have like your 3-point lighting system and you're using like a 51.2 for your client calls, it might be too much. They might just prefer having something that's a little bit more real and authentic.
Yeah,
Plus,
definitely.
there's also less that can go wrong whenever you simplify the setup.
Yeah, I
I don't
agree
know if
with
there's a
that.
way to split test that. Like, yeah, if you have a good camera that you can hook up as a webcam, it might be a good idea because you are a photographer, and to have a little bit of a polished camera that's better than our Lo-Fi Monday setup here might be a good idea. But don't go completely off the deep end. Green screening, everything would be my suggestion. I think it's if I got on a call with somebody and it would just be it'd be strange. I don't know.
I do agree with you, Taylor. Like, I think it is about the like authenticity and getting a sense of like who you are as a person. Again, this is a first impression. In some ways, it's kind of like dating. It's like making sure that there's like a match there and that there's like a connection. And just like little details like that can sometimes really, I think the kids these days say give the ick or something, right? But like that's what it is to the couples. And we've seen it all. Like some people have crazy gel lights in the background. It's all like blue and red and it looks like a strip club. Like, I don't know, like if that's your client, like cool, that's fine. Like another example is I'll do a little callback to last Lo-Fi Monday where we talked about the whole Ignite sales process. But I use an example there of how we often after the call, we have our studio management team do a soft close. And it's just like, hey, if you had a great call with Taylor, let us know if you want to book. And so many couples like take us up on that. They're like, yeah, we had a great call with Taylor. Like, let's talk about booking. And actually the example I used from that, I think the email and the inquiry I used, I forgot to mention it, but that wedding, they booked before the engagement session, right after the call. It was a $9,800 wedding booking. And I think on the inquiry, they put TBD as the wedding budget.
Budget. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
That's
Thumbs
crazy.
up. Yeah.
We got a thumbs up. Wow.
We got a thumbs
We're
up.
getting real high five this Monday.
That $9,800 booking is high five. But I wanted to mention that I remember that photographer, the one that booked that like nearly $10,000 package, very professional Zoom setup, very professional. One of the best audio visual setups I've ever seen, but not like over the top, like authentic. Like I think, for example, they had a few of their prints in the background, right? On like
it also gets people on the train for hey, printed products, suggestive selling.
So it's just those little details, right? That really matter. So take a hard look at how your Zoom setup is, test it out a little bit, maybe run a recording, make sure the audio is good. If you're in the Ignite program, obviously we're going to be screaming at you to fix those things. But if you are just auditing this on your own, good to just jump on Zoom with somebody else. So yeah, start there. That makes a big difference.
Yeah. And then if you really want to elevate it, you get triggers for different lighting in the background. So when it gets to the soft close, everything gets nice and warm. Big orange lights come in.
Yeah. I love that.
Actually, that sounds like a pretty fun idea. I feel like I should do that. Not
you
for
should.
client meetings, just for YouTube set. All right. So you have a professional setup, you have good clean audio, good lighting. Yeah. Where do you go next? What do you actually talk about? And what does like a good, like the first couple sentences are really important. Like, where do you begin other than like, can you hear me? Can you, and you can, yeah.
I think setting the tone for the meeting really helps. Like I always like to set kind of a tone or intention for the meeting. I sound like a yoga recording, but just letting the couple know that like, hey, don't want you to stress or anything. I want this to be really relaxed and for you to be comfortable. Obviously maybe doing a bit of a callback to like the story they shared. Obviously with the Ignite program, we get couples to really share their love story. So typically there's like lots to go off there to talk about their love story or something about their inquiry. If you're doing this just on your own and this is for your own inquiries and you're doing client calls, yeah, if there's something they shared there that you can relate to, that's a great place to start. Just saying something like, hey, I really liked that you shared this about your story. This was really cool. That stood out to me, that kind of thing. I think setting kind of a goal of doing like an 80-20, at least in the first half of the call, 80% being listening and 20% talking. That's a great kind of heuristic to start with. As the call kind of progresses, then you can talk more. But the goal at the beginning of the call should always be discovery and connection. People, when they're talking and you're listening, that builds connection, it builds trust. They feel like, Taylor is listening to me. He understands what I'm saying. He's taking this all in. If you don't listen and you jump immediately to like the solution, you're like, hey, you're getting married at this venue. Like, I haven't listened to you at all. I think you should book this package. They're like, how do you know that? You don't know me. Like, you haven't heard anything. So I think the number one goal is asking them about themselves, about their wedding, what their vision is. And the goal is ultimately to get them to kind of vomit out whatever it is that's in their head.
Yeah. And if you need some help to socially do that and to know what questions to ask, now, fortunately, like most of my calls, and I think it's been a minute since I've had an in-person meeting. In-person meeting, it's weird to bring a list of like questions to ask your couple to get them talking. When you're on a computer, you can just have a notepad document with a couple questions up that, at least if you're drawing a blank or if they stop talking all of a sudden, you're like, I'm so socially awkward, I don't know what to do right now. You can at least kind of go into one of those questions. And that can help you kind of lead the meeting, I guess, because it is up to you in a sense to kind of lead the meeting, that you're the professional, you're the expert. They don't know what they don't know at this point. And especially like Ignite wise, if you're meeting with a couple really, really early on in their process and maybe they're still interviewing venues and you're on a call with them. I think it's nice to have a few questions that you should ask throughout the course of a conversation. What
Totally.
kind of questions do you suggest that photographers ask couples?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Taylor. I mean, you really want to figure out how you can help them and what information you'd need to know, right? So ask them about like, what are you guys planning for your wedding? What does it look like? A very easy place to start is just ask them, hey, are you having a big wedding or a small wedding? Do you imagine having a lot of people or not a lot of people? Is it
It's a good visualization. I like that.
Totally. And like right off the bat there, you get a sense of pretty much if they're going to need an 8 or 10 hour full day package, or if they need like a micro elopement 4 hour or 2 hour package. Right there, you're already kind of categorizing them there. So that's a great place to start. Tell me, are you thinking of a big wedding or a small wedding? Asking them like what's important to them about it's a great place to start. I also heavily think that you should lean into the visual side. They're interested in you for your work. Screen share your portfolio or a wedding that you've shot recently or a gallery. And you're actually doing two things at the same time when you do that. You're building value. Oh, that was perfect timing.
Crazy here.
We're getting crazy. You're building value and you're doing discovery at the same time. So you're able to like see what photos maybe in the portfolio that they're attracted to. That gives you a better understanding of like what they're looking for, what their vision is. And that's actually something we do in the Ignite program right before the couples actually meet. So with like Taylor, for example, so we book the call with Taylor. And sometimes there's a lead time on that call. Like they don't meet Taylor for another 3 or 4 days. What we do is we actually reach out to that couple and say, hey, like leading into the call with Taylor, is there anything you'd like to share about your wedding or the vision or the vibe for the call? We'll often send Taylor's portfolio link and we'll just be like, hey, do you mind screenshotting a few photos from his portfolio that really stand out to you? It engages the couple. It gets them excited for the meeting. It obviously hypes up Taylor because we then send him a message. So Karina's like, hey, I talked with the couple. Here's like 5 images they love from your portfolio. It gives him a better idea of that vision. And then hopefully he doesn't take the call in the car.
I like that a lot. Having like the visual of, I would also like a lot of the time if it was a venue that I hadn't shot at, if they were already at the venue stage, I would just ask for like samples of the work that they like from their venue as well. Because they've obviously spent a lot of time in it and they're excited to share. So even if it's not like, they're not asking me like, hey, can we replicate this exact shot? I'm obviously going to always do something a little bit different. But if they're like, hey, here are the 5 images that sold us on this venue. In that case, not only is it helpful for maybe potentially booking a couple, but also for just generating marketing material as well. I feel like it gives me a better perspective, that it's not just based on only what I've done in the past, that now I have kind of more of a, oh, this couple's coming to me for candid photojournalism, but then they also like these 5 photos. That's something that's personally interesting to me. As a business owner, partially offensive maybe as an artist if I ask them for their 10 favorite photos from their venue and I've shot the venue and like one of mine make the cut. But I feel like as a business owner, I would rather learn from that, even if the short term is a little painful, to see what that couple is specifically after. And usually it's pretty apparent as well. My couples are a lot more on the photojournalism side a lot of the time. But then they will actually send me a lot of images that I have very, not heavily posed, but they're like all posed images. They're like, we love how candid this is. And I'm like, none of those are candid images. Like,
Yeah.
like I lit this one with like off camera, whatever. So that's something that's interesting, and getting feedback and not being afraid of feedback, I think is important as well. It helps you absolutely grow.
I think this is like one of the most exciting and tricky problems to solve in a photographer's sales process. It's that the client has a vision of what they want in their head. They've probably been looking at work. They've been looking at your work. They've been looking at all sorts of stuff. They're formulating this vision of what they want. And that vision is so hard to articulate. And that's why sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I really like the like candid photos, but those are totally posed. And it's not until you actually get them to like circle the photo or point at them that you can actually understand that. It reminds me way back decade ago when I was selling RVs, you'd have someone come in and they'd say, yeah, we need a 30-foot like trailer because it's got to fit in our driveway. And I'd walk them straight over to the 30-foot trailers and I'd be like, here's exactly what you asked for. And then they would like look across the lot and they'd be like, no, I actually want to look at those ones. And it would be like a 50-foot trailer and be like, cool, that's fine. But like, that's not going to fit in your driveway. And I think it is a very similar perspective here where like they have such limited vocabulary and how to like explain this vision in their head, right? If you can take more of a visual approach, that's going to be a lot easier to like extract that vision. And it's that vision and that understanding of their vision that builds the trust and that leads to the sale.
Yeah. Very cool. Any other tips, suggestions for myself trying to hop on a Zoom call and trying to actually close a client?
Yeah.
What does the ending look like for you? I think is another important thing, because I'm so awkward with like the sale. It's like, great call. Bye now. And then you say bye like 5 times while you're trying to click off the chat, but you're trying to still look like you're looking at the camera. But
yeah, it depends. Obviously with Ignite, it's a lot easier because they just say, okay, Karina's going to follow up with you. My studio manager is going to follow up with you on next steps and, about booking the engagement session, that kind of thing. If you're doing this on your own, you do want to, in my opinion, make a soft ask. If kind of you've done the discovery, there's some trust being built, you can tell that there's a connection, the date is going well kind of thing. They're talking to you about packages. You're maybe collaborating on what package is going to fit their vision. Making a soft ask at the end is a great way to kind of just see where they want or see what they want and kind of give them options. So my suggestion is give them 2 options. Option 1 would just be like, based on what we've talked about now, like, no pressure at all. Like, are you interested in wanting to reserve your date with me? And talk about like what that looks like. And that gives them an out. If they're like, no, we're not ready to do that, no worries. But I would just make that ask, and you'd be surprised how many couples will kind of bite and be like, yeah, we're interested in like reserving the date. What does that look like? And then obviously you can start talking about, it's like what that contract looks like. If you get a bite on it, you want to move very quickly. It's an emotional decision. I would highly recommend, if you're using Focal or some CRM system, build out that booking portal, send them a link right then and say, hey, I'm going to leave you with, we talked about the 8-hour package. I'm going to leave you with a booking portal link there for you to review the contract. And if you want to reserve the date, feel free to sign the contract and put the deposit down. This is where I would say most of the objections are going to come up. It's around that deposit or that initial payment. Photographers are really, really bad at asking for money. Really bad. I think we could do a whole video on this another time, Taylor, but I think the simplest is to say, if you want to reserve the date with me, my typical retainer is X. Does that work for you? And if they kind of are like, I don't know, or you get the sense that they're well, like maybe it's too much, you want to try to like kind of ask them. And I think the best way is, hey, no pressure at all, but like if my typical retainer percentage of like half is too much for you, I'd be open to maybe doing something that's more comfortable for you at this time. Could you let me know like what would be more comfortable? And then they'll come back with a number and then you can decide if that's like an acceptable deposit or not. Again, that's a whole conversation about objection overcoming, but I see a lot of photographers lose weddings right at that point.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just from my awkwardness of sales, but rather than like asking like, hey, would you like me to talk about what this looks like? I will just like monologue into it. Whenever I feel like the meetings come to like a natural end. Actually, if you're on the member site, you have access to, I think 2 or 3 of my real life meetings. I'll actually just monologue it and talk about like, okay. And like, I feel like this is like the natural close here. So if you do want to move forward, here's what you do. And I don't really ask for any, I can gauge it if they feel uncomfortable or if there's something going on, but I'll just kind of walk through like, I usually, it's a 50% retainer to book the date. We can do contract payment, everything online, e-transfer. I can do credit card. If you prefer to get air miles for your honeymoon, at that point, a lot of people are like, oh, we can get points. Cool.
Yeah.
And you can decide if you eat the cost of that transaction fee or if you pass it on to your couples. And that's usually how I leave it. I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's just what I've been doing for years and it feels pretty comfortable. And then as you mentioned that if they're uncomfortable with the 50% deposit, usually maybe the next day they'll send me an email and they'll be like, hey, we'd love to move forward. Is there any way we could do like 25% upfront? Which I'm fine with doing. I feel like payment plans have become, it did not used to be a thing 5 years ago. I feel like I never split the retainer up. And then the past couple of years, basically since COVID, I've noticed that a lot of my couples that I don't know if it's a comfort thing or if it's an actual funds thing, that a lot of couples are asking for split payments, which I don't know if you guys have seen that as well. Is that a common normal thing?
Yeah, actually, a big change to the Ignite program that we've made in order to accommodate payment plans is first off, we never collect our focal revenue share until we've got 50% of the booking. For example, say you have a $5,000 booking, we might ask, like say the couple is only able to do $1,000 now. No problem. We take the $1,000. You as the photographer in the Ignite program just get that $1,000, goes right into your bank account. And then whoever your studio manager is, it's their job to actually fulfill the booking up to half. And then only then does Focal charge our part. So that's typically how we handle it. And I would say for sure it's becoming more common that couples want payment plans, especially on some of the bigger ticket bookings, especially if they have just booked their venue. And now are making like a back-to-back decision on the photographer. They just parted with a huge amount of money usually as well. So I think being accommodating with the couples is hugely important. Obviously say like my typical deposit is 50%, but then name it like Taylor suggested, like say, hey, like, but I totally understand. Like if you just booked your venue, that was probably a lot of money. If there's a number that's like more comfortable for you, please let me know. I would never ever suggest a number yourself. Always get the couple to come up with the number, because when they come up with the number, that means they are committing to it. So if they come back to you and say, well, could we do 30% or 25? They've already committed to that number. And all you have to do then is say yes. You will get a lot more bookings by being like more flexible and like actually working to overcome those objections. If you're a photographer that's like 50% and then you never follow up on it, you're hugely missing out on a lot of bookings there, I would say. A lot.
I'm curious, like in my 20 years of doing this, that's how I've mostly left conversations. Sometimes when I start talking about that, the couple's like, yeah, can you just send us the contract and we'll like take care of the payment tonight?
Yeah.
I would say that's maybe 20% of the time that happens. The other time, I just kind of leave the call. Maybe I'll do a follow-up if they ask to see like a full gallery or something. Mm-hmm. But I never really gave them the option of splitting up that payment or making it different. So I'm curious how many people I lost just out of the fact that they just didn't have that, or they looked at their bank account and they knew it was going to be another 2 or 3 weeks before they would have the ability to do that. And they just like left the chat over awkwardness.
Yeah,
they
totally.
they didn't know they could ask for less of a retainer. They didn't know that they could negotiate that. And then I just never hear from them again. I'm like, why'd they ghost? Like, we had such a good call. And then I never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's probably the reason for most of the times that actually happened.
I would
which
think
is sad
so.
for me to realize now.
I would think so, because no one goes through the effort of that, going through the cold call, talking about packages, and then not booking. Again, I think this could be a whole another video on how to do follow-up properly, how to handle objections. But my short answer here is you just want to open the door a little bit. So let's say you do what Taylor suggested and said, hey, like, this is my typical process. If you want to do that, let me know. You know, and like a week goes by, just follow up and like open the door a little bit. Pretty much opening the door is like, hey, couple, yeah, I noticed you haven't gone forward with like signing the contract, booking the wedding, you know, just no pressure whatsoever. But I just wanted to ask if there's anything I can do to help, or is there something holding you back? And then you can even name, assume it is. So you could say, you know, sometimes I know that like a 50% deposit can be a lot. You guys just booked your venue. I'm sure that was really expensive. If that's the issue, and that's like the script right there, the template, if that's the issue, like, let me know and I'm happy to work with you on that. And then you'll get 2 responses to that. Either they'll say, yes, like that, you nailed it. That is the issue. Thank you for talking about that. Or they'll say it's something else. And then that's a different objection that you can then overcome. But if you don't ask that, a lot of couples are too awkward to bring it up on their own.
Agree. All right. That's where we'll leave you this Lo-Fi Monday. If you do have any questions or suggestions for other videos, feel free to put them in the comments below. We are happy to include those in future videos. And for now, I will leave you with this song. Have you ever been on a photography trip? Ha ha ha. The best zoom lens in the world.